I don't know if it's a learning curve, but it's a growing process of, can you be courageous enough to have your own voice in the midst of all this turmoil and chaos?
Yeah. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Bamboo Ceiling Podcast. On this episode, we just wanted to kind of go through our journey podcasting, right? Maybe some of our struggles, some of the things that we've learned along the way, and maybe this will encourage some of you guys out there to start your own podcast,
or discourage you.
or discourage you, right? So right off the bat, I just want to start off. What are some of the struggles? Let's go struggles, since we're Asian. We always talk about the negative first.
All right, so like my struggles would be, one of the toughest ones for me was like opening up, because for the fact that I know everything I'm gonna be saying is gonna get recorded and it's gonna be like put out there, and I think just growing up, like opening up and telling people how I feel, that's kind of been one of my struggles.
Yeah, like in your regular life, are you someone that is pretty open already?
I'm pretty open. Like behind the cameras, I'm a pretty open guy. But something about just having the cameras on and the audio recording, it just throws me off.
Do you feel like it has to do with being vulnerable and having any backlash or feedback that can
too
affect your image? Or
that too? Yes, because and I'll be open. Like as soon as I started telling my coworkers about my podcast and friends, and then that's when I start going, shoot, I hope I didn't say anything like in previous like episodes that might have offended them.
Yeah.
So I do think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, vulnerability. I think for me, to relate to that, I think being not like trying to, because I'm not very politically correct.
Yeah.
And so how do you navigate the fine line of being honest with yourself and being true to what you say and what you believe, and not worry so much about that, but also not, take away who you are as well. So, because I think a lot of times, I think what you say here or anywhere you put it online, it'll affect you, especially with the climate that we live in. And so I think, learning how to navigate how to say things and still be true to yourself is something that I can relate to.
Right.
And so, I think to your point, I could be vulnerable, but
yeah.
I think how to say things has been something that is a struggle for sure.
Yeah, that's been a big one, being vulnerable. I think a part of it is like even understanding my own opinion on certain topics, right? Like, do I really believe in what I'm saying, or is it other things that influence me? And of course, how we come up with the opinion is we allow things to influence us, and then we make our own thought, right? And to really like believe in what I'm saying, that and like that be my real opinion, and then to your point, putting it out on the internet forever,
right,
for anyone to judge and critique.
Yeah. Yep.
I was doing I work at schools, and I was doing like a top 10 internet security rules for the classroom, right? And one of the top 10 was careful what you say on the internet, because it can affect your future, right? Like a future job, a future whatever, because you're on whatever you say on the internet is going to be on there forever, right? And so, yeah, just thinking about those things have kind of been a struggle. It took a while to kind of figure that out and be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I've learned to appreciate like other podcasters, right? Like, so prior to doing this channel or our podcast, like I just listen to people, and you don't know what goes on behind the scenes, like all the prep work, all the preparation, and all the heartaches that come with it, because like when you put up a video and then it doesn't get the views you want, you're a little blown back, right? And like I listen to Charlemagne and Andrew Schultz a lot, and like I've learned to appreciate, because like everything you say that comes out of your mouth, you don't get a second take, right? Once we hit record, we don't get to go, a pause. Let me
cut it out.
Yeah, cut it out. Cut that out. I mean, we can if we want, but then the whole idea of like having this podcast is to just kind of let it go, you know.
Yeah.
And then you start to appreciate that, like, man, it's a skill. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people are watching our channel and going, oh, they could do this better. But we wish we could too, because it's challenging. It's not that easy. It's not a matter of just hitting record and just talking, you know?
Yeah. And there's a lot more, like, to that point, there's a lot more than just putting on the mics and hitting the play button and just talking to a mic. The preparation behind the scene, right?
You always say the iceberg, right? So can you elaborate more?
Yeah.
on
So
that?
the iceberg, like, I mean, just talking about, hey, like, people see only what is displayed, right? You only see the performance, but nobody sees the stage light person. Nobody sees the guy in the engineer board and doing all these things and you know, pulling the strings and make everything work. And there's a lot of behind the scenes work beforehand, during and afterwards, to, you know, put on the cameras and push play button and record. So and I think at first, I think one thing was we learned how to, like, you know, not be super scripted, right? I think that was a struggle of, like,
it was.
How do we be genuine and not be super scripted and have a genuine dialogue or conversation? Because in the beginning, that was something that we didn't know how to navigate.
Yeah, just basically how it can be planned out, but yet still be genuine.
Right. So it doesn't come off like you're reading off a script, you know, or like
Yeah, it took us a while to figure that out.
Yeah, our first episode was rough. And that where we wanted to set up the Bamboo Ceiling podcast and wanted for people to get the concept of the bamboo. And for me, it felt, to me, when I did it, it felt super scripted. But that was because we didn't know how to display our personality, but also, you know, have a chemistry in conversation as we were navigating that. So that was tough. Even though we had our natural talents and gifts and, you know, of learning to have conversation, we just didn't know how to put it all together. Yeah. That was tough.
That was a tough part, yeah.
What are some of the things that you guys have learned along the way? Like, what are your biggest, like, lessons from doing this podcast?
Well, I will say, like, maybe it's not like quite where the answer you're looking for, but then, like, for me, I've seen that I've been using the podcast as some sort of, like, therapy. You know, like, so when we touch on, like, topics that maybe I don't usually talk about, it kind of forces me to open up and talk about those issues, like the Hmong dad ones and what I hated, you know, about being Hmong. Like, those are the things that you don't just, like, go out and drink with your friends and talk about, but, like, it kind of forces me to open up on these topics. And so, like, in a form of therapy, it's been working for me.
Yeah.
I think for me, success doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
You know, it takes consistent work, hard work, and growing and learning. There are a lot of stuff that I'm not comfortable in just having conversation because I don't know a lot of stuff, right? I think things that are up to date, things that are happening in the Hmong world, like, I'm not part of the Hmong world much in my personal life because I work for an organization, not with a lot of Hmong people. And so learning how to, like, grow when it's uncomfortable and you don't know a lot, but challenging yourself to grow in some topics or subjects that aren't your cup of tea, right? Is something that I've had to, like, take the disbelief out and be like, no, I am willing to challenge myself and figure this out so that I may understand to empower or impact, you know, the Hmong folks, or just things that I don't know about. Because we all have a unique voice, right? And we all have our own experiences that can add value regardless of how you feel because of your own experience.
Yeah, and that whole idea of adapting, like, man, like, because as we were doing this, there's so many things that I thought when we first got into doing a podcast, there's so many things I thought would just come naturally, and it didn't. You know, like, I thought we really could just turn on the mic and just talk and hit record and talk about certain topics.
That's not how it works.
Yeah, that's not how it works. And so adapting to, like, even my own assumptions, adapting to, like, I think for me, one of my biggest struggles have been, like, learning how to edit video and audio, because those are things that I do not enjoy doing. Like, I don't enjoy doing that at all. And so go, and YouTube is your best friend, right? Yeah. Go on YouTube, learn all you can learn, and then just, do it.
Practice and practice, huh? Yeah. Basically.
But I think the key is like, I do believe in the podcast. Like, I do believe in this whole idea of like us having a voice, a different voice for our community. And so that's what pushes me to do things that I don't enjoy.
Right, because we've always had this conversation. Like, I feel like within the community, the Hmong community, like right now, I feel like they're more into like the funnier stuff, more like comedy, entertainment. It's more like they're looking more for like an entertainment value. But like, I'm hoping that and our goal is to continue doing this, right? So that eventually the listeners will catch on to what we're trying to do. And hey, it's okay. You can watch like funny stuff and like entertaining stuff, but at the same time, you can listen to us too, and get some value out of what we want to say.
Oh yeah.
And just that's one of the struggles too, knowing that like it's gonna take some time to build it up.
Yeah, I do hope it can impact or bring value to the community, in the long run, right? As I think has been a lot of social, cultural issues in the world that in the Hmong community or Asian community, we don't know how to feel or how to react or what's our voice in it. And so I think learning how to be comfortable in the voice that we have here and who you are, but also being able to be courageous enough, right, to express how you feel even when there's tons of opposition and nobody can understand it from your vantage point because you have your own experience in that. And I think that's something that is a learning curve, or I don't know if it's a learning curve, but it's a growing process of, can you be courageous enough to have your own voice in the midst of all this turmoil and chaos?
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. For me, I think one of the wins that I've seen from doing this podcast is being able to interact with some of our audience, right?
Yeah.
And while interacting with them, seeing that they're able to open up and talk about certain things,
yep.
right? That it's not just entertainment value, or it's not about just review on a movie or whatever, right? But it's actually talking about some real
life issues,
yeah, like things that affect our community. And like, even like my wife, right? She's the person that will like just keep her head down, right? But because we were doing the podcast and I'm interacting with her and she's listening, she's more willing to open up about how she feels about certain things now.
Right.
Things that are going on in the world.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, okay. Like those are things that I take those as wins, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Also creating a safe, I hate the term safe space, but I think creating a space where even though we don't have the same views, we can have a dialogue. Like, I think that has been refreshing for me because I don't have that outside of here much, where like, man, you got to watch what you say a lot. You're always walking on eggshells. And for us, like, even, with outside of our shooting, our on air time, like being able to like just have conversation and not, even though we don't agree with stuff, that we can just have this space to just dialogue and process outside of our on-air time. I think that's refreshing. That's a win. And I feel like everybody needs that, where even like if you talk with somebody that you don't agree with, that you have people that can trust that will always listen or value your opinion or your experience regardless of that. And I think that's a win for us as well.
Yeah.
No, I like that. Like, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because like I'm kind of using this podcast as a tool, right, for my life outside of the podcast. So like, because I think one thing our audience don't know is that like we probably like they don't understand that we don't really agree on a lot of things, right? We have a lot of disagreements.
Yeah.
And but that's taught me is that, okay, how to learn how to, like you said, have a dialogue, right? Instead of just arguing and me being like too far left or you being too far right, or whichever way, right? And then just disagreeing on certain things. We've learned to channel that difference and learn how to communicate, and then by doing so here on the podcast, I've been able to do that outside of my life too.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's a win, you know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. To that, like learning how to listen, be a
Yeah.
better listener,
Yeah.
as it helps you be a better communicator because you can understand without already attacking or judging. And I think that the world is already, jumping on the, hey, we're attacking regardless of how we feel, what
You don't
say
agree
before.
with me, then you're wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think for us, it has taught us how to listen
Yep.
before and then react, in the ways that in our ignorance that we might not understand. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that has helped a lot. So
Oh yeah. So what if someone wanted to start up a podcast? What would you say to them? What would be the number one advice for you to tell them?
that's a tough one. I don't know. I haven't quite thought about it, but like, if you want to start a podcast, like my number one advice is just don't give up, right? Just don't start one episode, not get the views and go, that's not for me. Just, you got to keep pushing because someone is listening.
yeah. So I'm on this Facebook page called Hmong YouTubers, and there's so many talented influencers, right, on it. And I was like, dang, this person got so much potential. Dang, like that person. And it's like, but you see the ones that just thrive are the ones that don't quit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like to Doug's point, don't give up. Like this, you got to go be in this for the long haul. Unless you're super talented and like I don't know if you're the Justin Bieber and like you have some crazy musical talent that
You have a
you don't
ton
need
of money.
and you don't need a lot of videos, right?
Yeah.
To generate some, just popularity, but don't quit, because honestly 99% of the people just don't give up overnight, and it takes time.
It does.
And I think for us, we've had to be on this journey of like researching other podcaster and other videos and other channels, and understanding that, man, it took years for some of these people to get to where they are.
Yeah.
And when they started, it wasn't fun and it didn't look that great.
Right.
But it's just the consistent hard work that you put in, and regardless, but you got to start. I remember that was one thing that you said, you just got to start.
Yeah, I think that would be my advice, right? Dude, you just have to hit that record button and start. Like, even if it's on a iPhone or whatever you have, right?
Yep.
Start with that and grow into it, I think a lot of people, I'm afraid for some people that want to jump into it and buy like the $1,000 worth of equipment, and then they come to find out it sucks. They don't like doing it. But I think if you want to start out a podcast, just start recording and start doing it, and then you'll find out how much you actually love doing it. Because like, we do this because we actually love doing this, right? It's not for the fame and glory and money, because there's none of that.
And it'll evolve into something. I don't think we started out thinking podcast, right? I think it started evolving and then became a podcast in that sense. And we kind of just set that structure, and could definitely evolve to something else. And so, in that, I think it has helped us just to start and go somewhere with it.
For sure.
So.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of The Bamboo Ceiling, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at #TheBambooCeiling. Until next time, use your voice.